Hi, I'm Sam. About 5 years ago, my whole world was turned upside down. More on that later, but let's just say in what was supposed to be the happiest time in my life, I felt totally lost. You're listening to or watching my show, where we'll be talking with friends in healthcare, wellness, and holistic healing about real self-care. I'm not talking about pedicures and bubble baths. We're talking true acts of care to maintain our physical and mental health so we can truly live fearlessly and fulfilled. Say it with me. Self-care is my job. Hello, we're here again for another episode of Self-Care is My Job. And I have a very special guest here with us tonight. So Ankhara Rose is here with me. I'm going to read a little bit about a bio of her, but we have a lot to talk about tonight. So Ankhara is a modern day mystic. She has 20 plus years of mindfulness, meditation, and breath as far as being a teacher in those areas. She also does a lot of work with body love and sound healing, which I'm so excited to hear more about. Mm-hmm. And in her business, her goal is to help people release hidden traumas and step into their fulfilled life of and stopping what's holding them back from living, sort of authentically, fearlessly, and more fulfilled. So these are all the things that we can start to tap into, because this is massive when it comes to self-care, obviously. So Ankhara, tell us just first, so that we can get to know you a little bit first, right? Mm-hmm. Frame of reference. Tell us a little bit about you and how you got in to come into this space of the things that you offer now.
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having me.
Throwing it.
No, that's great. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And just before I even dive in, I want to say that I'm really, really glad that you're doing this work and that you're offering this for people, because it is so important. It's been like the difference between me being a non-functioning human and a functioning human. So it's very, very much in alignment with what I do. So, I would say the true beginning of my journey into all of this was a pretty severe eating disorder when I was younger. It was like late teens, beginning of college, and it lasted a bunch of years. And, I think it was tied into my father was an addict, and, I had an okay life growing up. I wasn't unhappy. I was well supported. But I had developed a lot of patterns of really like avoiding my pain, of perfectionism, which it's taken me many, many, many years to recover from. Like, I say that I'm more of a recovering perfectionist than recovering from anything else.
Right.
And just a side note, my cat's about to hop up on my lap, because anytime I'm talking on the computer, you guys will get a little cameo from Simon. Here he comes.
I love
See
it.
The tail. Yeah. So, it's like my recovery from my eating disorder. It wasn't therapy. It wasn't group. It wasn't treatment. I hit this point in my awareness where I just said, I have to stop fighting myself, and I just have to accept what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And it sounds so counterintuitive, right? It's like, if you're hurting yourself, why would you accept what you're doing? But that was my opening into finally forgiving myself. And that was the beginning of my self-care.
Right.
And from that, I discovered all kinds of things. I had my best friend was a Reiki master, and I started training, and I learned Reiki. I became a Reiki master. So that was kind of the beginning of my energy work. And then mindfulness was like, again, it was something where I wasn't like trained in mindfulness. I just kind of intuitively noticed that when I stopped what I was doing and went inside of myself, I felt better. Mm-hmm. And same thing with, how I healed from my eating disorder. It wasn't dieting. It wasn't a nutritionist. It wasn't, it wasn't rules. It was like no rules. It was like, I'm just going to be with myself. I'm going to start to really listen deeply to what my body wants. And let's just see what happens from there. And so, long story short, lots of trainings, just kind of following my heart with all of this. I became a sound healer and a breathwork facilitator and a coach. And, I do a lot of different things, and they are all revolving around the way, a couple of things. So one is the way that big trauma and little trauma is stored in our bodies and in our energy fields, and how that trauma puts us into a pattern or cycle of being triggered and unable to move forward with our lives. So that's one. Two is the idea of like, I think that we are bombarded with messages about like, be mindful, do self-care. And it should look like this, or it should look like that. And what happens is for perfectionists and just other busy people, I'm a mom, you're a mom, right? So a lot of the, I would say like the ideals that were shown actually aren't doable. So one of the things that I'm super passionate about is taking all of the stuff that I do and making like micro practices out of it and making it something that's attainable. Because no, you don't have to sit with a straight back and a soft belly for 45 minutes and your mind has no thoughts in it for you to be mindful. That is one way. There's so many other ways. And so for all of this work, there's so many ways in. And then finally, the last thing, which is kind of my newer endeavor, is the idea of bringing pleasure back into our lives. And that's a really, really big one. It's a big, juicy one.
Oh yeah.
Pun intended.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, it could be. It could very well be. So, and we will talk about that. So, so yeah, I love this. I love your journey. It resonates with me massively because, like so many of us, sometimes it's a specific trial or tribulation or trauma that is going to be ultimately our reason, right? Our reason why there absolutely needs to be a shift. I always talk about this. Like I always say, like, I'm a Virgo, and like what happens is I'll tolerate and tolerate and tolerate, and then I just hit a wall. And I feel like that happened, that I used to tell my story of, sort of what, why I needed to tap into, why I sort of intuitively started to move into that presence and mindfulness practice, and then ultimately made yoga a much bigger part of my life. And it was a layoff when I was 8 months pregnant with my first child. So obviously massive identity crisis, really, because at the same time as getting used to that new persona of being a mom, I was attempting to let go of that persona that I totally built around my career that was basically over at that point. So I used to say that was like that shift, that moment for me. But it wasn't, because it didn't come until like a year and a half later where I really hit that wall. And what I mean by that is kind of in line with what you were saying, where I just got too tired of trying to be a certain, or do the things that I was supposed to do and fall in line with the persona that I was supposed to fulfill as a mother, and as a, and with the labels. Again, we're talking about culture and how it, just sort of, places these labels on us: stay at home mom, working mom, yada yada, down the list, right? And so therefore, yeah, we all have that, period of time that many of us do, at least. But also, it's more about just simply the realization: are you fulfilled? It's like, are you happy? Are you healthy? Yeah, we can talk about those things. And those are obviously extremely important too, but like, are you fulfilled? Are you actually living aligned with the calling and the purpose and like your true essence that you've always felt inside of you? Are you listening to that inner voice like that person? Or are you just trying to fill a box, or, like to fit in a box, or to be a category or a persona and like do the things that you're supposed to do? So yeah, it's so important. So, and we'll talk for a moment about mindfulness, meditation, and breath, if we can. Because again, we are being that's everywhere, right? They're all buzzwords at this point. Self-care as well, right? And the reason that it's a buzzword that you see in the media and in culture and pop culture everywhere and on social media is because if it's a buzzword, then the media can sell us things, right? So they can sell us retail therapy. They can tell us to go get our nails did and our hair did, because for women, that's apparently what self-care is all about. That's sarcasm. And for the people who can't see my face. So talk to me for a moment, if you will, as an expert about what meditation and breath work can do for promoting a mindfulness practice and even additional benefits beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that I spoke just, briefly about it before, this idea that mindfulness, I guess I kind of have a different definition of mindfulness, because for me, mindfulness is anything. And actually, I'm going to pause for a second, because I've actually been using a word other than mindfulness lately. And I've been using the word presence instead. Mm-hmm. So instead of a mindfulness practice, I have a presence practice. And even though I'm pretty much doing the same thing, it actually feels a little bit more in alignment with what I'm about to talk about, which is anything that brings me home to myself.
Yeah.
Counts.
Yeah.
Right? And I really mean anything. Like, is it that song that when you hear it, you just moved on all levels? Is it like a walk outside? Is it your morning cup of coffee? Like, it doesn't actually matter what it is. What matters is what it does for you. Mm-hmm. And so, I think of the breath as a sacred technology. That's often the wording that I use, right? So this is like our goddess given tool that brings us home. It's really like, if you do nothing other than take 3 breaths, like, you've done it. And so, like, before we even do anything, let's just take 3 breaths together, because I feel like anyone can do it. You don't have to be like, you can be driving and do this too. If you are not driving, I invite you to close your eyes for a moment. Oh, so just roll your shoulders back, right? Float your eyes closed, unless you're driving.
Right.
And just for a moment, just place your attention on your bottom. Feel the weight of your body being supported by whatever you're sitting on, or if you're lying down, whatever's underneath you. Or even if you're standing, feel the weight, your full weight down on the bottom of your feet. And then I'm just going to invite you to take a nice slow breath in through the nose, filling up the lungs. And right when they get as full as possible, you're just going to gently blow it out of your mouth. And feel yourself land more fully in your body. Another breath in, deep breath through the nose. And as you exhale, release any tension that you have in your physical body, maybe your jaw, maybe your shoulders, your neck. And this one's my favorite. Deep breath in through the nose. And let it out with a sigh. Pause for just a moment. Notice what feels different. Maybe something does, maybe something doesn't. And open your eyes. Like, it wasn't even a full minute, right? It can be so short. It can be 1 breath.
Right. And I feel like 10 pounds lighter, like with 3 breaths.
It's amazing.
Right.
There's so much that I can say about the breath. Right. And there's so many different, what I found since I actually did a breathwork facilitator training. And I do the kind of breathwork that I facilitate with clients. It's not relaxation breath. It's like breath work.
Yeah.
that ends with a deep relaxation, but it's like 25-ish minutes of like semi-intense breathing. As I've been doing it longer and longer, I realize like it's the same thing. It's like the intensity doesn't matter. It's your commitment. It's your like intention. So you can do it gently and still have a really powerful experience.
What are you showing up for? Yeah, and intentionally for. And sometimes it's just like creating, well, this is like many different forms, like practices of self-care that you, and really almost any form of self-care that you actually incorporated. It's about making the time for it, for yourself, prioritizing yourself, and sending a message to your brain that you're worthy, right? Like that you
100%.
like, it's just, it's not that, so, yeah, like all self-care practices are created equal, because it's long as it's yours, it's for you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the 8 limbs of yoga. Like some people will think, oh, like the goal is that samadhi, that universal connection, that super consciousness. Actually, the 8 limbs of yoga are not one element is not more important or elevated than another. So it's like, whether it's meditation, whether it's breath, whether it's just quiet stillness, like it's literally carving out that space and making sure that it's for you. It's just for you.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying about how, it's like, it doesn't have to, same thing that I was saying, right? It doesn't have to look the way that we've been told. And, I'm gonna like kind of veer off in possibly a weird direction for a moment here. Here we go. Strap on your seat belts or whatever. I'm part of a divine feminine movement, and this movement is really about bringing the essence of the feminine back into an equal ground of the masculine. And I can go on and on about this, but what I will say, just really briefly, and there's nothing wrong with the masculine. I'm not talking men and women. There's more and there's combinations, but in general, right, we have been under a masculine paradigm for thousands of years. And the masculine energy, right, we can call it forward moving energy. We don't have to give it masculine and feminine names. It's all about like rules and structure and progress and innovation and, not stopping. It is this impetus to go forward. Mm-hmm. And what we've lost by everyone being rewarded for their achievements and very, very little rewarding, if not like casting off or insulting or judging for their beingness, is we've forgotten how to be within ourselves. And we have devalued things such as quiet and such as stillness and such as like, it's not breaking the rules, but it's finding our own rules.
Yeah.
The same way that when I healed from my eating disorder, I had to learn how to listen to my body's hunger and fullness cues. It's like we have to relearn how to listen to, I was just thinking about this the other day. We have to begin to learn to just like check in with ourselves.
Right.
So, I'll use like Facebook as an example, right? I have a tendency to be like super addicted to it.
Oh yeah.
And there was this moment the other day where I was just like, I'm just going to check in, like, how good am I feeling while I'm doing this? Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, this is the kicker though, right? I can answer that and say, I'm not feeling so good about it. And I can still choose to keep on going.
Right.
But the difference is that awareness, that checking in puts me back into a position where I am able to choose. If I'm not checking in, I'm just on an autopilot.
Self-awareness is self-control. Like,
yes,
it really is. I mean,
and self-care.
Yeah.
And self-care so much. Yeah. I cut you off. Sorry.
No. That's literally all that was tracing in my head. It's like, sometimes you check in with yourself and you take a couple breaths and you think about how your body feels. Is there tension? Is there lightness? If you have that presence practice, right? If you can, if you incorporate that, And it's the only way to develop that ability to become self-aware. So, and I love that you call it a presence practice, because that word mindful, it's true. That word mindful, it's not necessarily, it's a pretty word that I think it really, it's like hitting me now. Like, it's a pretty word that was, used as some form, to describe it, which is fine. But it's really all it is. And it kind of drums it down and simplifies it, I think, to say, yeah, you're just becoming super present so that you can check in with yourself. How do you feel in your physical body? How do you feel in your emotional body? How do you feel energetically? Even, and this is not, and describe and elaborate. No, just, are you feeling tension, or do you feel light? Is it somewhere in between? Do you feel more anxious than you did yesterday? Like, it's just that awareness. And it's so super important. And it's like, I feel it's like level one in having and in being in control of your own light, really, and not being this person who, like you said, is always reacting to everything external, and always, feeling this need for striving and doing and creating and producing and go. It's like, as soon as you become aware of what's going on inside of you, then it's like level one of just being there and not feeling the need. I feel like so much anxiety just comes from that need to do always.
Oh my gosh. And so much of it isn't even from us. It's just our like cultural programming, right? It's like, those are the messages that we've been given. And it's not wrong. Like, I do want to be really clear. There's nothing wrong with achieving, and there's nothing wrong with moving forward and innovation.
Masculine energy. There's definitely, so there's that there's that business angle that you kind of, you need that little bit. Even I always say that about ego too, like that persona that you kind of like, the voice that you like associate with, but like sometimes it's really just that inner self that you actually need. But there's something even to be said about the ego, because it will push you to go further, right?
I don't make the ego wrong. I mean, listen, if it's a part of us, there's a reason it's there. So
situation.
Right.
It's balance, just like anything else. Now, balance is complicated. It's not always, like, I always say that. I always say balancing. I like to, not finding balance, because I think that this happens very rarely, right?
It doesn't exist.
And if it does happen, it's for about 20 seconds. And then you're like, here. So it's just, we're in the practice. I love using the concept practice in general, right? We're always just practicing finding balance or balancing, instead of just like, I found it.
Like, and nobody found it. None of my teachers, none of the gurus. I no matter what they say, there's never a landing place. If you've landed, you've stopped. Like, you're missing something, right?
I love the idea of I literally will say it to myself on repeat in most days of like, like yoga, life is a practice. It's just like, because that's who I am. That, like, those kind of ideas are in my head. That the fact, and people think when we say practice that we mean a routine, and sometimes it is used as a concept in that way, like your yoga practice, your self-care practice. But I like to remind people to take that for a very literal word. It is a practice. We are not, and it's a continual practice. We're not pursuing anything. There isn't even so here comes all those thoughts that we absorbed from generations past. Practice makes perfect. The goal is perfect, right? But we got to let those things go. We are literally, life is just practicing and learning. If we fail, if we succeed if it's somewhere in between, and just growing from it. And then we practice again continually. I feel like if we take on that kind of a mindset, then life just gets a little bit lighter, you know?
Right. And it does, it goes back to that, the perfectionism, right? Because what is perfectionism at its core? You are not good enough. I mean, that's the message, right?
As
you have to prove,
Yep.
you have to do something to be worthy. When in truth, we're all worthy just
Right.
for being.
Like,
I remember
cakes for the Thanksgiving get together at school, and did I hand decorate them and place each sprinkle on in
you didn't
spot, or did I scoop up 2 boxes of cookies from Trader Joe's and literally hand them in the bag that I bought them? Or did I not even bring anything?
Right.
And that's okay too.
Because that's what we can do sometimes. And that's the piece that I think most people really struggle with when I talk about what the presence practice is. It's like sometimes our resistance is the practice.
Yeah.
Sometimes our resistance is the way. Sometimes our refusal to do it is, it's all part of the same thing. Mm-hmm. And you know, as much as I totally believe, I'm going to call myself a growth junkie, which I never have before, but that's what's coming up. Like I have this need to learn more and to grow more. But at the same time, like that, it comes secondary to my being comfortable with myself and okay with myself. Like if I'm just perpetually, like there have been times where my personal growth and even my mindfulness practice was actually a way to bypass my feelings. And I think that it's really important to point that out, because there are people who like dedicate themselves so much to mindfulness and rising above the situation, right? Having this detached, it's like it's not even a persona, but like making themselves so detached that they don't have to actually experience what they feel.
Yeah.
And so it's almost an equal opposite to doing nothing, right? It's
you're avoiding, right? Avoiding addressing like key things that are going on inside of you. And addressing those things admittedly can be daunting, and they or at least seem daunting. But I always think of this thing that one of my amazing coaches used to say to me. It's like once you take, it was something like, once you take the flashlight out and shine it on your demons, they scatter real friggin' fast. Meaning, like, you think that you're resistant to really feeling your feelings and actually being vulnerable and being raw and actually like being there, and you're rising above constantly, like you said, and just like, okay, we got to move on. It's okay. We got to move on. Because it feels like it's just you're gonna crash and burn if you really sit in those feelings. The reality is, if you get a good cry out, or if you get a good journaling session in, right? Whatever needs to happen to really be in it. Those gremlins, they scramble pretty fast, actually. So like,
they do.
Way, you know.
I always say it's the story
about it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And you know, I was even talking to my 7-year-old about this the other day. We went to go get a COVID test, and she had like it was a whole thing because somebody told her it was miserable and it wasn't fun. But you know, and the story in her head was keeping her in so much fear. So much fear. And I felt so much compassion for her, right? But it was a reminder for me, and we had a conversation about it. It's like, you know, sometimes the story is where we suffer. We suffer in the story. When you really, really let yourself feel your feelings, you feel them and then they pass. But it's the resistance that keeps them there. What's the phrase? What you resist persists.
And then you'll keep telling, and then there'll be a multitude of stories that come from staying.
Oh yeah.
So we talked a lot. I'm shifting gears just a bit. I want to talk about pleasure. And the way I'm going to say, let's get to
I'm ready.
So, because I'm so just intrigued and curious about everything you're doing with this. And like I said to you when we were just chatting before, the first thing that resonated with me when I started to read about this body love and pleasure work that you're doing is that it goes, you know, you can go a few layers with it, but immediately for me, I've been talking a lot about the fact that life doesn't have to be a struggle. And it's right in line with what we were already saying, the fact that we have this culture that kind of presses us to be doing, going, and even one-upping ourselves at every turn, you know. So now I did that, and now my next, you know, attempt needs to be even better, you know, or whatever it is. So it's that race with ourselves, which is always a struggle. And I think that we come from past generations that used to have those conversations of whose life is harder. You know, so it used to be my life is harder than your life. And now what is it, right? Who knows? Where it depends, right? We're kind of like in this middle ground. But we have those voices and those patterns, I think, that direct us into believing that that you're not successful if you're not struggling, and if you're not striving constantly for the next and the next and the next. What about living, first of all, like really living and like being in whatever pleasure is for you, like actually going after it. Forget just like, you know, deserving it and eventually getting there. It's like, no, like I'm going to go find pleasure now, like, because I'm living now.
Yes.
I love, that's where my brain went with it. And now I'm going to let you tell us whether or not that actually made any sense.
It makes so much sense. It does. I'm going to get personal here. So for me, having children, right, becoming a mother, changed my hormones, my body, and I just completely turned off to pleasure for like a long time. After being for many years someone who was like all about it. And here's the thing. So when I'm talking about pleasure, like sex is included, right? But that's actually not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is like full felt experience, embodiment, and savoring of whatever, right? Like, is it a buttered roll that you are just like loving up? Is it your cup of coffee? Is it, you know, I'm petting my cat on my lap right now? It's like, it's for me, pleasure so much about slowing down and again, coming home to the body. And then from there, it's like, you know, when my desire shut down, I didn't realize how connected it was to all of the pleasure in my life. And even though I kept going, and, you know, as moms do, we kind of put our head down and move forward and we take care of what needs to be taken care of. And also as moms do, my own needs and my own care became secondary. And it just, you know, it was never sitting right with me, but I accepted it as it was, kind of like, you know, and that's just how I am. Like I say, okay, this is how it is now. And when things are ready to change, they're going to change. And so there's a really, really amazing teacher, and she's a poet. Her name is Maya Luna. She's so remarkable. Go look her up. I had taken an offering that she did. And something shifted when I did it. It wasn't about pleasure, but it just brought me into a different kind of presence. And when that clicked, I was already facilitating breath work and doing a lot of breath work on my own. And I had this moment where I was in breath work and I was like, wait, this is really intense, but it feels really good. And I started to self-touch. And what happened is the breath work that I do releases a lot of trauma. It releases a lot of shame. So there was just some magic there between like gentle, loving self-touch and the breath work that just like blew the doors open for me, you know? And I don't know if I'm even answering your question.
No,
I'm
I
just,
want to
I'm just
know.
going on, but
Obviously,
you
it's
know,
really important, like how, if it like, if we don't know how it clicked for you, then then we can't understand how it would work. Yeah, like, you know,
yeah.
so yes, do tell.
Yeah. And so like, you know, like what I found as I'm working with more and more women, this is a relatively new offer, but the more women that I work with this, I'm finding like how it just so naturally, the shame starts to unravel, the sexual trauma that most of us have experienced in some way, shape, or form, whether it was physical, whether it was the messages that we got, whether it's, you know, subtleties, like all the cultural programming about ourselves as sexual beings. And I'm just working with women with this work. So, you know, I am talking
Specific
to women here, right? So, you know, we're really taught as women, it's beyond just us being an object. We're really told that sex is a performance. And so, and that sex is about power. So what is sex if it's not a performance? What is pleasure if it's just for me?
Mm-hmm.
What is pleasure if it's not about power? Yeah. It's about enjoyment.
I mean, even though you're not to cut you off, but like, even though you're saying, oh, you know, this isn't just about sex, it's just such a good example. Especially, like, it's like that example cuts right to the root of what I feel a lot of women, and I'll say it from my perspective, because I know that there are tons of women who feel this way. How many women actually, while having sex, don't think at all about what your partner is thinking and needing, like almost entirely? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't even know if
it's like, what's
right.
my partner thinking and what do my thighs look like? What do my breasts look like? What's my stomach look like
from that angle?
Right.
Or like, should I move this way? Like, do they want this now? Or maybe I should stay where I am, or whatever it is. So like, I mean, I'm definitely in that category. I will say that I do think that having a presence practice has enhanced my ability to become self-aware in those moments and flip it as needed, right? So right. Obviously you have that piece there, but you know, that's just the tip of the iceberg as far as what I will admit right here and now, the work that I know that I can do in that area. And the reason I say it's just a good example is because that's one of the most apparent moments, I think, as women, where we are really fully, you know, here we are in this extremely intimate, supposed to be pleasurable moment, and you are detached from your own damn body, for God's sakes. You're not in it.
That's what it is, right?
Even outside of it, because you're kind of like directing yourself on your performance over here. And then God only knows what it must be like for, you know, people who have experienced sexual trauma. And there's that entire level that, you know, and I can absolutely see the connection of how that will detach you from pleasure in general, right?
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting to me. And
it's an area of our life force. It's you know, it's like where we get our life force from women. Like just you know, even just thinking about that. So talking specifically about sex, but it is all interconnected, right? Because when we start to enjoy that, you know, stepping outside and taking that breath of fresh air in the morning, right? And we really savor it. We really sip it in. We enjoy it. We start to be able to enjoy all kinds of things differently. So there's many, many doorways into the same thing.
100%. When you talk about it from a mother's perspective too, like when you think about it, it's actually all of the same, right? Because we are, as mothers, we're meant, you know, and I'm bringing in one of my favorite books right now, Untamed by Glennon Doyle, where she talks about being a model, not instead of a martyr. So as a mother, you're expected to, you know, in in past generations and what those patterns and ideas have been passed down are essentially that you're supposed to sacrifice yourself entirely for your children.
Yep.
And so you're a martyr. But one of the things that she says really always hit home for me in the 2 or 3 times I've read the book, is like, and what is it like for the child to know that their birth is actually like the killer of your joy, your pleasure, is their birth is the end of your pleasure. It's like ridiculous when you really look at it from that perspective. How ridiculous. Would they want that? No, of course not. But then you can go deeper down the line there. But the point being that from a mother's perspective, you're sacrificing yourself. So you're for, like, you as a friggin' being, you're just for your children. That's it. And then same thing with your, historically, right? Like what we're taught and what we're conditioned to understand. Same thing with your husband or your partner. You're just for them. And that's the conditioning that we have to try to reverse, I think, it seems like.
Right. It's like that classic example of, where we are the empty cup, where this constant outpouring, like, that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. And, I think about, when I think about, again, like the feminine is about receptivity. Like, here's the irony, right? Like part of the essence of our being is this receptivity, is the opening.
Right.
And how many of us struggle to receive?
Right.
How many of us can really, really relax into receiving? Yeah. And part of that is the worthiness issue. Part of it is feeling really uncomfortable in our bodies, feeling unsafe.
Yeah. I think that this is so, like, it's so perfect for the conversation that I'm always trying to bring forth, which is obviously incorporating self-care for not only physical wellness, but mental wellness, emotional wellness. So basically it's like, like an even simpler example, I think, for a form of self-care that will give you pleasure is like, okay, like maybe you really do want to veg out on the couch. Like maybe you literally took 3 breaths and said, no, really, like I want to lay the fuck down right now. And what comes in to your head stopping you, blocking you? It could be so many things, right? As a mother, I should be playing with my kids, or I should be cleaning, yada, down that line. Or
the patriarchy's in my head.
Yeah, it's like crazy. So all that, right? But then it's also the idea of that conditioning of thinking that everything has to be go, 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 do, and a struggle, where if you do sit the F down, you're lazy. That concept always is a thing for me, because I know I had a parent that was she still is to this day, very hyper productive person. And I always innately had that awareness of my need to just chill. And it wasn't a good combination. So it's just a more drummed down example of like this simple thing. Like, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have to mean laziness. That's pleasure. That's my pleasure. I'm going to grab it. I'm going to be here. I'm going to feel the blanket on me. Like, I'm going to be in it. I'm going to get cozy. I want it and I get it and I'm going to take it. And don't call me lazy, but like something simple like that, of just incorporating that downtime, that rest, to recoup, to recover as a form of self-care without feeling guilt or shame while you're doing it, because you were told that pleasure is laziness. And just feeling,
or receiving is lazy, right? Like receiving is selfish, right? That's the one that we always hear. Oh, you're being so selfish to enjoy receiving. Right. But it's the same thing. It's just so, it's all made up. So
it's just a reversal of not our complete reversal, because they're always going to be there. Like, so it's that self-awareness that comes in and allows you to find the balance. Because all of these patterns, they're not disappearing like that. They're not, you can't erase it. It's just becoming aware And right back to square one, right? How do we develop that presence practice? Meditation and breath are a
Yeah.
really effective way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
this is like, God, we could go on for hours and hours. And I've had so many, I want to thank you seriously because this is, this is my, offering to people to bring different forms of self-care into their awareness and just like give ideas and advice. But also there is like a selfish angle for me because I get to sit and learn from these people who have lived it and own it and are experts in these topics. And I'm just so excited that I got to talk to you. We can go on and I probably will have you back because I want more.
I'm not ready to end.
I know, just go on and on. But I do want to ask you if you have any final thoughts for the people who are either watching or listening, and do also include anything super cool that you have going on right now so that we know where to find you and look for you.
Yeah. So let me think about that. What's the final thought? Yeah. So like if there was like one takeaway that I want everyone to have at the end of this conversation that we had, it's that, throw out the rules about what you were told, right? And the more, it's like an invitation to really, really begin to get curious about what you feel and what you like and what you want. Right? And it seems like so simple. I do this daily practice where I put my hand on my heart and I talk to my heart and I say, what do you feel and what do you need? Right? Sometimes it's long, sometimes it's like a one-word thing. And I take people through this too. And when it comes to what do I need, lots of times the things I need aren't actually things that I can have, but the act of asking myself is incredibly cathartic. And so it's the same with anyone, right? It's like, what am I feeling? What do I want? Maybe you can't have it, maybe you can. But start to get like some energy around it and start to honor what your experience is. So that's my invitation.
So important. And it seems simple, but it's one of those things that it will, even if you like, I can picture my, certain people, doing it and not, I love that practice and maybe not knowing the answers right away. Like I deal with a lot of women who are like, I don't even know.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like there's no, there's nothing painful around being a little detached, especially now. There's so much going on. We are trying to work through so many emotions during this COVID experience among everything else, right?
Yes.
So I think my point is like incorporating a practice like that, or just something that you come back to every day, you will eventually open that door. And just again, it's like what I was saying before, just the act of asking sends a message to your body and your brain that you're worth somebody asking.
That's it.
How are you? What do you need? What can I do? Right. And then later on down the line, when you have to ask someone for support so that you could go to yoga or that you could have 10 minutes alone or whatever it is that you need, you'll feel worthy of making that a priority in your life. But it's like little by little we get there. We got a lot to break through. It's true.
Yeah. Absolutely. But it's a practice, just like you've been saying. It's a practice and it's building the muscle, right? It's like, listen, we are detached from our bodies.
Yeah.
We just are. And so, when you think of your body, if your body was a relationship partner, what's the status of your relationship? Are you caring what your partner's saying? Are you neglecting your partner? Are you taking your partner? Are you trying to shape your partner into something it doesn't want to be? Right. But we don't know those things because we don't spend time with ourselves.
Yeah.
And so the more we practice, we build that muscle and just so subtly over time. And, you know, it often takes less time than we think it's going to take. We start to notice, we start to know ourselves again. And like, for me, that's the most important thing, right? Being in myself, knowing myself, honoring myself, and feeling, enjoying my life. I'm here for a reason. I want to enjoy it, you know?
Exactly. I want to live. I'm here to live. I'm not here to struggle. And as much as I am similar in that way to you as far as what you said before about being a growth junkie, I'm all about that growth. I'm all about that evolution, right? But I'm not here for that either. I'm here to live.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
If I grow just from failing miserably at everything,
I know,
and then learning whatever I did wrong, and then going with it after that, that's enough for me. I'm here to live. So I'm with you. As soon as I saw that word pleasure, I was like, this is my girl.
I want this. I want this, especially as moms. We need this.
I mean,
no joke.
I mean, we don't, especially as moms, because what I'm realizing, the last thing I'm going to say, what I'm realizing more and more lately is that with the moms that I work with, I like to be particularly, tender, because I do, obviously, because I'm a woman and a mother myself, and I empathize. But I like to be particularly tender because I understand that there's so much to break through as far as feeling worthy and gaining that self-love to start prioritizing yourself. But what I'm realizing more and more lately is it's a chicken and the egg situation. What you actually need to do is just do something, go right into it, so that again, you can see that a little goes a long way. You see that difference right away, and that you can start once again sending the messages to yourself. No, you really actually do deserve this, because we are we're conditioned again to think that we're for everyone else but ourselves. It's crazy. So thank you again so much. I hope
you're so welcome.
This was such a good, uplifting, inspiring conversation. Remind us one more time. I don't think I heard it.
I don't think I said it.
I'm like,
you can. I didn't say it. I'm so bad at this part. You can find me online. My website is ankhararose.com, and I'll spell it. It's ANKHARAROSE.com. And I'm planning to do a Pleasure Portal Breathwork Group session around the solstice. So solstice is December 21st, but I think that's a Monday. So maybe the weekend before. So kind of have a big release and a big dive into pleasure as we move into this next yearly cycle on the wheel. So if y'all are interested in that, that's going to be up on my website. I'm actually working on the page tonight. So it should be up.
1,000% for that, just FYI.
Awesome. Yeah, so I definitely invite you for that. I'm practicing it every day. We need it. We need more. We need to go into 2021 with a whole lot of pleasure. So
seriously, well, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing right, between Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'm offering a meditation and breath for calm and clarity, because in my head I'm like, ooh, baby, like holidays are already, especially for mamas, they tend to be a little much and very anxiety inducing, because we're trying to make everything perfect. So that's why the timing was important for me, because not only that, as much as we can let go of 2020, unfortunately we're going into 2021 with just as many unknowns and just as much uncertainty. So it's self-preservation. We have to get ahead of it. We have to. It's really the only way to make it.
If not now, when, right? If we don't start taking care of ourselves now.
Perfect time. You're not going to get that, like we were saying before, you're not going to get that perfect hour block. Just poof. You got to just get into it. Gotta make it happen. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I love it. And we will talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening or watching. Hopefully you will follow or subscribe. I hope to see you back here. And if you want to find me on Instagram, it's _aligned_heart or alignedheart.net.